Leslie. I'm with Art Insights. I'm Cinema Siren, as you guys know, and I'm with Carole Barnes. Carole was with Bill Melendez Studios, and she, as they all say, all the animators say that she knows where all the bodies are buried. So you kind of talk a little bit about when you started and what you did for when they were creating all the Charlie Brown specials.
I started actually in 1967.
Wow.
And
so were you there for the Halloween special?
No, I was not.
It was right after.
It was after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really work with Bill as a production assistant or as an animation checker. I simply did archiving with the Charles Schulz strips.
Oh, okay.
So he would have me look at all the strips and cut things out that were pertinent to the next story to be used. And so as a result, things got a little slow, so he had to lay me off.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't brokenhearted because I had another job to go back to.
Okay.
But then later, in 1970, after working for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer as an animation checker, I was laid off. And so immediately I called Bill. And he said, well, I don't have anything open right now, but in a few weeks, check back with me. But he said, in the meantime, call Warner Brothers and speak to somebody over there. Maybe they have an opening. Well, I did call, and it didn't work out. So later I called Bill back, and he said, well, I don't know. He said, come on in. I'll find some work for you.
Oh, how nice.
Yes, wasn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
And so I did. I came back, and he said, well, I can't put you in to animation checking right now, but because I have Beverly Robbins doing that work. But I'll tell you what, you can do some more. You can do some lettering for me, and that was my sidelight, was doing lettering.
Oh, okay.
So I started doing lettering, and then finally Beverly decided that she didn't want to work there anymore. Mm-hmm. So it was an opening for me. And it was a good thing because I had almost taken another job with another studio. Mm-hmm. And we had gone out to lunch, and he said, no, Carole, you stay with me. I really need your help. And so that's how that career began. And 39 years later, I was still with him.
Wow.
And so it was
as
wonderful.
An animation checker.
As an animation checker, and then he put me into production managing.
Wow. So first tell us what an animation checker is, because some people know everything about it and some are just fans of the shows. So.
Well, an animation checker is an individual who takes all of the artwork, the pencil drawings, and puts them down on the board and works with the exposure sheets and checks all the drawing to make sure that the character is complete. That when the character walks across the stage and goes to open a door, that he walks in so many steps, and that the action is correct, the mechanics are correct as far as his steps, that he opens the door properly, and so you know then that production can go into ink and paint.
It sounds like a very mathematical and attention intensive kind of work.
It's a detailed job. You have to love detail.
Like being an editor.
Yes, and I love detail. And
what are some of the biggest gaffes you found that you had to fix?
Well, primarily the biggest challenge was when we had commercials to do, and we couldn't have separation of color of the character. In other words, if a character's face was on a top level...
Right. That's one color.
Yes, that's one color, and it had to balance with a part of the character that was on the third level.
Right.
You had to be able to bring that face down to match that character so that there wouldn't be a problem with the color separation.
Wow. So it really is all about detail.
It's detail.
And there's a million things to check.
There's a million things to check, and I devised a lot of things whereby we had what we call paintbacks, where we would leave the character on the top level
Mhm.
completely clear,
Mhm.
and we would create a level underneath that character where the girls would paint, and they would flip over the cell and match their paint to the face, so that now that level that was on the 5th level would really be on the 4th level. The
Oh.
color would really be on the 4th.
Huh.
And I had so many opportunities to import that type of strategy in my
Right.
work.
That's so cool.
Right. It was very cool. Sometimes the client would say, "Well, we see the difference in the color. We can't have that. We can't have the character's face looking darker than the rest of him."
Mhm.
And so that would be my job.
And were there a lot of women that did animation checking?
No, 2 or 3 maybe.
So, how many women generally around you in animation? There weren't a lot of women other than in ink and paint.
There
At the
weren't
time.
two. There were maybe 3 at the most that did animation checking.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an art, and you had to be trained.
Mhm.
I'll give you an idea that when I first started to learn animation checking, I was hired by a company called Quartet Films, and they paid me $150 a week.
Holy cow! What year was this?
1960.
Holy cow!
Yes.
You could buy a car.
And I didn't even have to do anything. I just watched somebody else. And she would check, and then at the end of the day, she would quiz me. Now, what did I do at this point? Why did I bring this character down to this level?
Mhm.
Why is he walking behind the door and not in front of the door,
Mhm.
so that we can register him to the door?
Right.
It was
Teaching and
Teaching-
checking at the same time.
teaching and checking at the same time, and they paid me for 3 months. I never did any work. I just watched this person.
Well, you were teaching her. You were getting paid for
I
teaching.
was getting paid for learning,
Yeah.
and she was a wonderful person. She went on, and I'll tell you what was funny is that she left the studio and left me in charge. And she went to the bosses and said, "Let Carole be your checker. I've trained her. I know she can do the job." And that's how I got started in the business.
That's a wonderful story.
Yes, I was really an inker and painter at Disney's.
Oh, when were you working at Disney?
I worked at Disney's in 1955.
For Lady and the Tramp?
No, for Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, so Lady and the Tramp already, because it came out in 55, so they were
Right.
starting to do Sleeping Beauty. Last hand-inked movie.
Yes.
More different colors of ink than any other movie
I
at
know,
Disney. They
I
were
know.
crazy to do the inking. Did you work on any Maleficent? Because there's like 19 different
Oh,
colors.
I have
Insane.
I have a book at home with the inking that I did, and I had a friend who purchased the artwork. She worked at Disney's.
Mhm.
She later became a bunny at what's his name?
The Playboy Ranch.
Playboy Ranch.
Right.
She married Vic Damone.
Oh, wow,
Her
sassy.
name, her name was Judy Damone, and she she got this job because the ink and paint started to peter out, and so she was able to get some of my artwork. So at home, I have some of my artwork that I actually inked on Sleeping Beauty.
You mean you have the inking or you have cells from them?
I have a cell that was photographed
Mm-hmm.
in black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and
And so you remember all the insane number of ink colors that
Right.
Maleficent, and I love the curl in Briar Rose's hair that they did with inking. It's such a real, I mean, I understand why they switched to xerography in 1960, but to me, you really do see the difference. It's art. When you
Yes.
look at Sleeping Beauty cells, in and of themselves, they're pieces of artwork, and
They
it's
are.
because of the inking.
right.
It's very underrated, the amount of artistry required in inking and painting,
Right.
and very few men did it. Did you ever were there any men working there at the
No,
same time
it was
as you?
all women working there.
Guys couldn't do it.
No.
Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
Did they ever try to hire a guy?
I think later they did. They did have inkers later that came in and worked on there. on their gallery sales.
Uh-huh.
And you can check with Chris there. She worked at Disney's. She's walking around somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but then the height of my career there at Disney's, I was selected to work on the exhibit for Walt Disney Studios at the university back in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
Carnegie Tech Institute.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what did you do there?
I did one huge photo of I didn't do the photo of Walt Disney, but I did the characters around him from the picture,
Wow.
and it was photographed and it was part of the exhibit.
Do you still have some of that stuff?
Yes, I have it at home.
Isn't that so much fun?
Yes, it is.
It's nice to have things from your career.
Yes.
So then you went to being a production manager.
Right.
And what did that entail? You were the den mother.
I was the den mother. I had to make sure that everybody got their work out on time.
Uh-huh.
The ink and paint departments, I had to make sure that things got to camera on time. I had to work with editing to make sure that when pictures came back, that I would have to view them to make sure there were no mistakes, because there could be color mistakes.
Right. Yeah.
And you had to have a trained eye to see that, and I had a really trained eye. I could pick up.
Well, you'd done it all already.
Yes.
That's why you were so perfect for that job.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I mean, if you're an inker painter, then you're doing color check. I mean, gosh, you've done everything that leads up to being the production
Right.
manager.
And I met Bill clear back in it must have been about 1962 or 63. Yeah. And see, I worked at Northrop for a while.
You were saying that. So
Yeah.
you did that. You were in animation. Was it propaganda stuff they were doing, or
No,
was
I was working
educational films?
educational. I was working on the Talon T-38 jet trainer.
Wow.
And they had a small ink and paint department, and it was the most fascinating department. It was run by a gentleman, and who was an OSS officer during World War II.
Uh-huh.
And he said to me one day, if you can be an artist, you could do any job in the world.
Yep, it's true.
And he was just a fabulous man. But then the division fell apart, and I got laid off. I was just there long enough to get my security clearance from the government. Then I got laid off. But that's all right. That's how I met Bill.
See, it all happens one right after the other.
Right.